one of the reasons I wanted to do this now is if we were going to have any problems, I'd rather have the problems before the semester ends. Then ideally, once the semester ends, we won't. All right. I wanted to show you this in case you care. And again, if you don't care, that's fine. But I just wanted to show it to you, and that is this. That's it. I don't know. It's one of these books. I think it's this one. This is the book you would have. Bless you. If you care. All right. Gaddis writes a really good book. This book is almost the same thing as your C# book. So if you want to buy it, you can. It's probably over $100. I think his books are like $160, something like that, 158 or something like that. But it's a very good book. Like I said, in all seriousness, he writes a really good book. But this is the table of contents in that book. I'm not going to read it to you. But if statements, loops, etc. You know how to do all that stuff. All right. What's new is going to be like methods, a first look at classes, array list. So I'm going to hit on some of that stuff that's in this book that you haven't gone over yet, or at least you haven't gone over in any of my classes. All right. Now, my question is, if you look up on the screen here, okay, so I've done all this stuff now, right? And now I just go in and I do a file, tell it to do a save all, and I come up and I do a run, and I click run again, and I tell it for sure what I want it to run, which is Java payroll. And then what should happen is somewhere down at the bottom here, it should open up an output window for me at the bottom. And there it is. All right. So first name, last name, hours worked, hourly rate, gross pay. Does all that make sense? Is there anything in that first program that doesn't make sense? Again, this is your chance to ask, and really, I'd rather have you ask. I hate that when people go, I can't ask. No one else asks questions. This is going to sound dumb. No, it doesn't. All right? But you can see, you can literally map up. So notice employee first name, employee last name, etc., hours worked, hourly rate. And then notice I put 2 \n in there. That's these 2 blank lines, 2 extra blank lines. All right? Now, what if I didn't want this, if you look up on the screen here, what if I didn't want this to go on a new line? There is not just a system.out.print line, there's a system.out.print as well. But it doesn't, when it gets done, it keeps you on the same line. We didn't want to do that, but we could have, is what I'm trying to tell you. All right? Now, good, bad, indifferent, whatever you want to call it, the kind of bad thing, so to speak, about this program is every time we run it, we get the exact same output. And we get the same exact output because we've hard-coded the values in. We've hard-coded in the first name, we've hard-coded in the last name, we've hard-coded in the gross, the hours and the rate. All right? So we're going to change that in just a minute, but I wanted to show you something first. If you all look up on the screen here. All right? Now, if I wanted to do this, I'm going to grab this calculation, this line right here, and I'm going to copy it right now to the clipboard. You don't have to do this, but I want to show it to you. So I'm going to say gross equals calculate gross, and I have to pass hours, and I have to pass rate. Now, notice how calculate gross is in red? Because I haven't written it yet. So the system is trying to tell me I can't resolve that. It doesn't make any sense to me. All right? It doesn't. So if I come down below this and I type in private, that's got to return a double, calculate gross, and I pass in hours, and I pass I got to let it know what kind of variable it is. Double hours, double rate. Oops. And I type in return hours times rate. Okay? Why am I still getting that? Oh, it's got to say static in front of it. Okay? Notice I don't have any errors anymore. All right? Now, maybe I did that fast, and maybe you're like, I don't have a clue as to what you just did, so let's look at it. Previously, we just said gross equals hours times rate, which is fine. But I wanted to show you I could also put this into its own method. So I'm saying here gross equal calculate gross, and I have to pass it in the hours, and I have to pass it in the rate. Then down here I wrote another routine. Do I have to call these hours and rate? No. I can call that H. I can call that R, which will then make this an H and this an R. You see what I'm saying? Because we did the same exact kind of thing in C#. This shouldn't be surprising to any of you. We've done this before. All right? And I could even grab all these things right here that displays all this stuff. All right? So I'm going to do a Control X here, and I'm going to call display all. But if I want to display all, I'm going to have to pass in what? The first name, the last name, the hours, the rate, and the gross. I'm going to have to pass all that stuff in. Again, I'm getting an error there because I haven't yet written display all. So I'm going to write here private, static, void, because it's not going to return anything, display all. In fact, I'm going to copy this. Notice when I copy this, I'm going to get an error. And I'm getting these errors because the function doesn't know the type of variables each one of those are. All right? In fact, I wish I wouldn't have done that. There, I need that. So let me just throw that down at the bottom of the screen here. So now I want to grab all of this stuff and I'm going to replace it with a method call. So I'm going to call display all, and I'm going to pass it first name, last name, hours, rate, and gross. All right, then I come down here and I have to write that method. So I'm going to write private, static, void, because it doesn't return anything, display all, but now it needs to know what kind of variables each one of these are. So I can say, for example, string, fn for first name, string, ln for last name, and then what else? What did we have? We had a double, h for hours, double, r for rate, and a double g for gross. Now I can grab all of this stuff paste it in, and I'm going to have to change all these, so this will have to be fn, ln, h, r, and g. So now I've gone back and I've rewritten this. If you look up on the screen, main is supposed to be a driver. Remember, we talked about that last semester. So now I am declaring my variables in main, all right? But I'm calling routines to calculate the gross and to print everything. Does that make sense to everyone? All right? And this one, I need to set it equal to something because I'm returning a value. Here, I'm not returning anything. Calculate gross needs hours and rate, which I now call H and R. All right? Display all needs first name, last name, hours, rate, and gross. First name, last name, hours, rate, and gross. So if I save this now, all right, if I do a file save all, and I go back and do another run, and I tell it to run the program, it should give me the exact same output as what I just had. And you'll notice that it does. And the only reason that I went through the trouble of showing you that is when you use that Gaddis book or any beginning Java book, they usually have anywhere from 10 to 15 chapters in them. And about the first 4 or 5 chapters, you write everything in main. Then in about chapter 6 or so, they say, hey, we got a chapter, we're going to call it methods, because that's how you actually write code. You know that already because you wrote methods in the C# class. Heck, you even wrote functions in the JavaScript class. All right? You've written different methods in ASP.NET. So you know what this stuff is about. All right? Now, I've mentioned this before. I'm just going to start, a couple people are having problems with different things. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this program right here. I promise, I will give you hard copies of everything we're doing. All right? But what I want to do is I want to make a change because I just told you, every single time that we run this program, it gives us this output. Now yours would be different if you use your first name, last name, etc. But the point is, since we've hard-coded the values in there, we always get the same outputs because we always have the exact same inputs. We don't want that. All right? It would be much better to sit there and do something where we would be able to ask the user, what's your name? What's your first name? What's your last name? How many hours did you work? Etc. Now that's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because I can run the program 10 times and every time I can put in good data. That's a good thing. It's a bad thing because if I screw it up and when it asks me for my name, that wouldn't blow up. But if it asks me how many hours I worked and I write 10 TEN, the program blows up because TEN is a string and it's not a number. All right, so that's what I'm going to show you right now. And I'm purposely going to leave some stuff out of here, and probably at least what's going to happen is I'm going to get an error. That's a good thing because I'm going to let the system resolve the error for me. Did you hear what I said? All right. So I'm just going to grab everything that I had in here in main. In fact, I'll keep my variables, but all the other junk that I had here, the gross, equals, the display, I'm going to get rid of all that. I'm going to get rid of these routines. All right. So now all I have in here is this stuff. Everybody with me here? So I'm back. All I have in there are those variables. And I don't even want to give these values. So first name is now the empty string. Last name is now the empty string. Hours is now 0. Rate is now 0. And gross already was 0. That makes sense to everybody? I've just initialized everything to the empty string. Did you hear that? There are 2 ways that we can write this now. We're going to write them both ways. The first time when we write this is probably going to be the only program you're going to see with this, but I want you to see it. When we run this, if you look up on the screen here, when we run this program in a minute, it's going to say something like employee first name, and your cursor is going to be resting right there with nothing in it. You'll have to type in a first name. See what I'm saying? You'll have to answer those questions. And we're going to use something that's called in Java that's called the scanner to do that. It's about as amateurish a way as you can do things, but it works. All right? So that's what we're going to do for this first one. Now, in order to use the scanner, we're going to have to add a line of code up here. Everybody see where the mouse cursor is right here? We're going to have to add an import statement right here. I'm going to leave it off because I want to see if the system is smart enough to tell me you don't have this import statement in and give me a little light bulb so it'll find it for me. And if you don't know what I mean, just keep watching. All right? So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say create a scanner variable. And I think this is going to give me an error message. So I'm going to say scanner keyboard equal new scanner system.in. And you can see already that the word scanner is in red. You can all see that. That's okay. Yours will do the same thing. That's good. hopefully you can look along the sides here. You can see this. I've got some stuff. If you look on the screen here, these are gold. Those are warnings. They're telling me I've got a bunch of variables that I'm not using to do anything. This is red to tell me it doesn't understand what it is I'm trying to do. Now, if we were using Eclipse, we'd get a little light bulb, and it would allow us to change. I'm trying to see. It's not giving me anything here. So let's see. Okay. There you go. Yeah, that is what we want. Okay, so if what Brady just said is if we sit there and click on it, okay, and there is a way it's like control space or control something. Alt enter? Okay. All right. And it says, what do you want to do? Well, we want to import a class. What class? We want to import Java Util Scanner. All right. We can manually type this line of code right here. Look on the screen, please. You can manually type this line of code right there. All right. Or what we could have done is with that error, with that in red, you take your mouse, you put it over this, and you should get the underscore, or like an underline there, and you do an Alt and hit the Enter key. And it says, what do you want to do? We want to import a class. What class? The scanner class. And then it adds it for us. All right? Now, that might not make any sense to you, but what there is, just so you know, is Java has got a big library. So we're importing one of the library classes in here. So what we're saying is, okay, we've got this big class that's called Java. And underneath that, we've got another class that's called Util, which is short for utilities. And underneath that, we've got another class that's called Scanner. So if you look at it in a hierarchy, we'd have Java, Util, Scanner. And Scanner's got a bunch of stuff in it that we want to use. So by importing it, it's like saying, again, like we were saying in the ASP.NET, using. It's the same thing as though we said using, but you have to use the word import here. All right. So you'll notice now, if I go down further, notice that the word scanner is not in red anymore because it's been defined. Okay? Please again look up on the screen. This word, there's nothing magical about it. I'm using the keyboard as my input device, so I call my input device keyboard. Tiffany could call hers Tiffany. It doesn't matter. It makes sense to give it a name that's reflective of what it's doing, but you don't have to. All right? Not only that, Java has got three different things here that you could possibly use. There's system.in, which is what your default input is. There's system.out, which is what your default output is. And there's system.error, E-R-R-O-R, which is what you do for default for error. Okay? By default, your system.in is your keyboard. It is. By default, your system.out and your system.error are your terminal screen. We're telling it that we want to be able to create, for system.in, we're going to use something that we're referring to as keyboard. All right, so now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type in this, system.out.print, not print line, and I'm going to say, please input first name. You have to spell right though. Now again, we're not in a hurry to get through this, but if you look up on the screen here, I'm going to save this. I'm going to do a file, save all. All right. And now I'm going to do a run. And I'm going to tell it to run the class. So why am I doing this? Because I want to show you on the screen. It's going to look different now. See that? Please input first name. And if I take my mouse and put it there and I type in Jeff and I hit enter, the program's going to stop because I haven't put any other code in yet. The point is it took Jeff now and it assigned it to first name. All right. Now you're all smart people in here, so you all realize that for our next line, we really should just take these two lines and copy them and then paste them, because now we want to say please input last name. All right. So it looks just like the other two, and again I'm going to do a file, and I'm going to do a save all, and I'm going to do a run. And now it should ask me to do both of them. Please input first name, Jeff. I hit enter. Please input last name, Scott. I hit enter. There's nothing else there. Does that all make sense? All right. Now, if you don't like the fact that all this stuff is so close to one another, we can always go in there if we want to, and before each one of these, put a \n here, put a \n here, etc. All right. So remember, we have to read in four things: the first name, the last name, the hours, and the rate. Make sense? All right. The way that we do the hours and the rate is going to be different. All right, just so you know, it's going to be different. What do I mean by that? Well, these are strings. So you need to use what's called in their next line, because after a string, it's going to force it to the next line. But the other ones, they're not strings, they're doubles. So instead of saying next line, we're going to say next double. All right, so what do I mean? Easiest to show you. All right, so I'm going to say here, please input hours worked. Now look on the screen if you would. I'm going to type hours here. See how I get an error? It's smart enough to know next line is for strings. You just put a double there. So it knows there's something screwed up there. It says, look, it even tells you what's required, a double. And it found a string. So this has got to be next double. All right, and I'm going to do one more that says, please input hourly rate. And again, this will say rate, and this will again say double. All right, I'm going to save this, do a file, save all, and I'm going to run it again. Please look up on the screen. Please input first name, Jeff. Please input last name, Scott. Please input hours worked, 40. Please input hourly rate, 25. It's going to stop because we didn't tell it to do the calculation yet. All right, and I had to manually take my mouse and put it over there. This is what I'm showing you right now with this next stuff in the scanner. This is as archaic as it gets. But there are still Java programs out there that do this. All right, now we've done all that. So we came in, we did a next line, please input first name. We did another one, input last name. We did another one for the double. We did another one for the double. Now we can come in and we can say, come on, get out of there. Now we can say gross equal hours times rate. Just the same way we did it before. And I wish I'd have saved that stuff, but remember then we had all those system.out.print lines? And I'm just going to do some copying here. All right, let's make sure this works. Save all, run, run. Run the program. If you look on the screen, please enter the first name, Sam. Please enter the last name, Jones. Please enter the hours worked, 25. Please enter the hourly rate, 60. And it gives me all that information. Does all that make sense? If you don't like the fact that it's so spread out, you don't need that many backslash n's. All right, that's no big thing one way or the other. So that was this one. Again, if I run the program again, I can put in all new names and values. All right, so that's a good thing. The bad thing is the fact that, did you notice this, that when I ran it, if I do a run here, did you notice I have to physically move this? See where I don't even know where the cursor is. So I have to physically click right here and then put in a value, hit enter, and look where the cursor is. So I got to physically move it over again. Not that that's terrible, but you know, it's like, isn't there a better way to do it than that? And the answer is yes. All right. Before I do that, I'm going to try to be a little smart here. I'm going to grab this stuff, and I'm just going to copy it right now. I'm going to copy that over to Notepad, so I've got that in there in case I want it again. There's all that stuff. All right. So I'm going to come back one more time. I'm going to remove everything I just put in. We're never, ever, ever going to use that scanner again. You never have to worry about it. But I wanted to show it to you because it is still used in some programs. All right. We're going to write it again, and this time what we're going to do is we're going to have what's called an input box. All right. And then when we print everything out, we're going to print it out in what's called a message box. Okay. So it'll look a little bit nicer. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to add a couple things here. Still have my first name. I still have my last name. Okay? But I'm going to have to add, it's not so much that I have to, but I'm going to add a couple fields here. So I'm going to type in string input str. It's called my input string. And I'm going to set that equal to this. String output string equal. All right, so I've got a couple more things that I've added right here. I added 2 more lines right here. I added these 2 lines. Could I make the program work without them? I could make them work without the output string one. The input string one I'll want to have. All right, I still have hours, I still have rate, I still have gross. All right, now I can come in here, right? Put in comments. Employee first name. Employee last name. This I'm just going to say temporary input string. Come over to here. Temporary output string. All right. Employee hours worked. employee hourly rate, employee gross pay. Now, you don't have to do that. I've actually come up with names that are good enough that you could say, did you really need to put those comments in? All right, but I'll tell you this, I will expect you to create variables that have good names. Does that make sense to everyone? By the end of the week, we won't be writing payroll anymore. We'll be writing other stuff. One of the ones we're going to write is BMI. All right? When we write that, I'll expect you to have height, weight, BMI, and BMI status, or something like that. All right? And you're to the point right now, almost in the fourth semester out of 4, that you should know that that's what you are supposed to do. So if you don't, if you're making all your variables A, B, C, I, J, K, etc., you're going to lose points. All right. It's easier again for this. Does everybody have this? We added those 2 lines. We added the line that said string input str and string output str. Other than that, this is exactly the same as what we had before. There's no difference. All right. But I'm going to come down here. Come on. And again, I'm going to put something in, and I'm going to say here, input variable values. All right. What I'd like to have you do is not type for a second, but watch me do this so I can explain to you what's going on in here. Okay? So the first thing I want to do is I want to say first name equals J option pane dot show input dialog. Please, I'm going to run out of room. Input first name. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like that. All right. Then I'm going to say here the same exact thing with last name. Now, there's a reason that I told you not to start typing yet, and that is I want you to hopefully understand what's going on here. All right. First thing, if you look up on the screen, look at this. I didn't even put that in. The system was smart enough to say, if you're going to use that, I'm going to put that import statement in for you. It put it in for me. I did not put that in. All right. Well, how do I know that? Because there are no errors here. It knew what J option pane meant. All right. Now, this program is far from done, but notice if I do a file, save all, and I go in and I run it, how it's changed. See that? Input first name. That's an input box. So I put Jeff here. Input last name. So I put Scott there. The program ends now because there's nothing else I've told it to do. All right? Does all that make sense? All right. Now, I'm going to put in something that I'm going to purposely put an error in here. You all hear me? I'm purposely putting in an error. So I'm going to copy this line of code. What were our 4 inputs? They were first name, they were last name, they were rate, I think hours was next. Hours worked. So I'm going to put hours here. And notice it's just got the underline there. And it's got the underline there because when you use this J option pane, it wants whatever you read in to be a string. This is not a string. We're trying to take a string function and have it read a value in that's a number, and the system is confused. You know, I've given you this example before. Like it, don't like it, laugh, don't laugh. It's not funny. But to me, all right, arguing with software for me is like arguing with my wife. It doesn't matter if I'm right. I lose anyway. That's how it works with software. It's expecting you to use this in a certain way, and even if you think this is right, it's not. You can't do anything with it. Now, what I can do is this. Remember that variable that we created called input str? Lo and behold, that worked. But now we've got our hours in a field called input str. It's like, what did that buy us? Well, I'm going to show you. So we're going to come in here and we're going to type in this. Hours equal, all right, and then we have to say this. Just like that. In fact, that code is so good that I can put it in as hours, and then I can put it in as rate. Now I can go in and do my gross, not course, gross equals hours times rate. All right. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to come down to the bottom here, and I'm going to grab all that stuff that I just copied, all this stuff, and I purposely just copied it there. Why? So that I can paste it back in here. All right. So I'm going to do a file, save all, run, run. So now notice what happens. Input first name, Jeff. Input last name, Scott. Input hours worked, 40. Input hourly rate, 30. And now I get all my junk at the bottom of the screen. There it is. All right. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that except, you know what? I don't want it at the bottom of the screen. I want it in a box. I had all my inputs in a box. I want my output in a box. All right. And I can do that. Okay. I want to basically put all this stuff in there at once. I'm asking you a question here. You remember JavaScript? Do you remember alert boxes in JavaScript? When an alert box would show something on the screen, that's the equivalent of what we're about to do. But if you look on the screen here, how many things am I printing out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. Would you agree, looking on this? I'm printing out 6 things. I don't want 6 different alert boxes. I want one alert box. Does that make sense? I want one. I want it to show me everything. Okay, so I'll leave this stuff here, but now I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to throw it in right underneath where it is. It's like, why do you have that in there twice? You'll see in a minute. So what I've done is I've glued all that together, and now it's in one big string. All right. So I'm going to now put in what's called a J option pane. Before I did a show input dialog, now I want to do a show message dialog. All right, null, oops, not there, come on. Why is it? You see that? I didn't put that in. Yeah. All right, let's see if this works. File, save all. Run, run. Jeff, Scott, 40, 30, and there it is. Okay. What I'm going to do is between, the fact that our class was disrupted for a while, etc. I'm going to run everyone off a copy of all three of these programs, even if you got it to work. I'm just going to run off 8 copies, all right, of each program, and I'm going to staple them together, and I'd like you to try to key those in. Get one to work, start making changes. I'd like you to get all 3 of them to work by the end of the class period. You don't have to turn these in. I'm trying to get kind of a routine down for you that when you're going in and you're going to be creating this stuff, that it makes some sense to you. Does that make sense? All right. Now, since I've erased all these, I think I've got them, but I've got to find out where the heck I have them, so this will take me a minute. I don't want JS. Why am I putting that in there? Java. Okay, so they're not there. That means they're over here. second one I printed out, I kept it portrait. It fits just fine, but I don't normally do that.